Thank you for joining us. It's now less than 24 hours before Shemitah is going to begin. And for people living in Eretz Yisrael, the farmers have been working on this already for some time. They're thinking about maybe I have to plant things before Shemitah and certain pruning that has to happen beforehand. I may have to work with my greenhouses that I have. I have greenhouses that have to be adjusted to make them suitable for Shemitah produce. I have even some people who plant in a specific way in months and months before Shemitah to make something called the Sadenir in order to be able to plant again before Shemitah. All kinds of special preparations they're making because there are restrictions on what they're allowed to do during Shemitah. And it's not just farmers. Homeowners are doing the same things. They're thinking about, I have flower pots and I have gardens that I have to think about weeding and watering and all different kinds of things that they have to think about, even if they're not farmers. They have to think about, can they do digging and construction in their backyards, which may affect halachas of Shemitah. So they're planning beforehand, thinking what they have to do. And the truth is, even the Iriyah, the city councils of different parts of Eretz Yisrael are also planning these things. They trim the palm trees before Shemitah because they're not going to be able to do the same during Shemitah. They adjust watering schedules and plantings and things like that in order to comply with the halachas of Shemitah. So these preparations have been going on already for months as people in Eretz Yisrael are getting ready and seeing what they have to do in order to be able to follow the halachas of Shemitah. But the people who, in a way, may have it the hardest in a certain sense, are manufacturers. And these people who manufacture and export items, if they basically close down for Shemitah because they have no produce, they have nothing to work with, then not only do they stand to lose business during Shemitah, but they could lose their clients permanently. Think about someone who's exporting his produce and shuts down for months and months or a whole year. His clients are gone. He'll have no customers to go with. So some of them say, I have no option. What am I supposed to do? And they rely on the hetem bechira. It's a way that the land is officially sold, and therefore they can have the same produce that they had the whole year, and they could go on business as usual. Okay? Those people, if they do that, they will lose their mahadran hashgacha, and almost all the national American hashgacha will also withdraw hashgacha from that because they don't rely on the hetem bechira. So that means to say is there are some products that all the time have a regular reputable hashgacha, but come Shemitah or thereafter, all of a sudden will lose their hashgacha. So consumers should keep their eyes open and make sure to check packages because what had a hashgacha today may not have a hashgacha tomorrow once it's already Shemitah, and these people chose to not comply with what would be considered standard. But others say, no, we're going to follow the halachas of Shemitah. We have to find some way to keep our businesses running. So they have some different options. They may buy produce from out of Eretz Yisrael. They may buy produce that grows in the political borders of Israel that are out of the borders of what halachically is Eretz Yisrael. Certain parts of the land, they're not technically part of Eretz Yisrael. They don't have the rules of Shemitah. They can buy from greenhouses. As I mentioned, there are greenhouses that can be designed properly so that there's no problems. The produce that grows there is not within the rules of Shemitah. They can buy from non-Jewish farms. Non-Jews who own farms in Eretz Yisrael, they can buy that produce. And there's all those things that I just mentioned. Each one of them has their own little questions and halachic issues to it. And many of these products will therefore be marked. They'll say on the package, it'll say Yevol Nachri, it came from a non-Jewish farm. It came from Matzah Menutag, from a greenhouse. It came from Shishis, I had it from leftover from the 6th year. In other ways, it'll say from Sheminas, and different ways it'll mention so consumers know what they're getting and how they comply with the rules of Shemitah, and whether that's appropriate. Now, all that I just mentioned about manufacturers, that's all good and fine for produce that has hashgacha on it. You buy French fries or some kind of packaged food, you'll see what hashgacha is what tells you that these people are complying with halachas of Shemitah. The hashgacha that's on there is what tells you that they follow the rules of Shemitah just like they follow all the other halachas in your day the person has to do. But now, that's all fine and good for those kinds of items that have hashgacha on them. What about for raw vegetables? So, raw vegetables they don't have hashgacha on them. They're just raw, peas and carrots. So raw vegetables have two halachas that are relevant to us. The first is that when we want to know whether a vegetable does or does not belong to Shemitah, that vegetable is decided by its harvest, which is to say is any vegetable harvested starting a day from now, starting from Rosh Hashanah until next Rosh Hashanah, if it was harvested during Shemitah, it's a Shemitah produce. So that means there will be Shemitah produce on the market in 24 hours from now. People will be, if someone harvests something starting Rosh Hashanah. But the second thing, which is restrictive, is that Chazal were concerned that people would plant on Shemitah and say that things grew by themselves. So Chazal made an issue called sefichin, and that is to say, is any vegetables that are harvested during Shemitah, those vegetables are completely asur. You're not allowed to eat them at all. Which is to say is that in Eretz Yisrael, the big exporters for us in Chutz are big exporters of carrots and herbs and peppers and probably some other things as well. Any of those items that are exported from Eretz Yisrael, starting from Rosh Hashanah of this year to Rosh Hashanah from a year from now, all of those items are asur as sefichin, unless they were grown without following the rules of Shemitah. The truth is that not only do they export that produce during every year, during Shemitah they export even more than usual. And that's because the local population is more sensitive to Shemitah concerns and won't buy a lot of that produce. And therefore, it gets shipped to the overseas market for people who are not aware or don't even realize that that's what it is. So, the good news for us is that here in the United States, the law is that if you in a fruit store, or at least here in Illinois, I should say, in a fruit store, the marks everything with the country of origin. So you see fruits, you see vegetables out there on the shelves, raw vegetables, they're marked where the country of origin is, and therefore you can look at the sign and tell whether it came from Eretz Yisrael or whether it came from someplace else, and know yourself whether there's a concern of Shemitah for that item. Locally, we have two other options aside from checking country of origin, and that is there are two stores that sell fruits and vegetables that are under the shevi'is hashgacha. First is Ted's. We're there, just the fruits and vegetables are under hashgacha. Hashgacha, in this sense, means we make sure that all the mitzvahs hatluis bars are taken care of. For all year round, every year it's for trumas and Kashrus, arla, and for Shemitah, it means we also make sure that the produce is not coming from away from Shemitah, which would not meet our standards. That's in Ted. So you go into Ted's and buy fruits and vegetables there without concern of Shemitah. And in Sarah's tent, we're there. The fruits and vegetables are, again, we oversee and make sure that the mitzvahs and pluis parts are taken care of. But even more so, we have the whole store under certification, so you could walk into any shelf and buy anything off the shelves, and it's all checked and made sure that it's kosher and to our standard. Now, so far I've been mentioning about it. Vegetables. Fruits don't have this halach of sefichin. They don't have this restriction that they're always asur if they're Shemitah produce, but they do have something called kedushas shevi'is, which means to say if it's a fruit that's considered a Shemitah fruit, you can't waste it, you can't discard it, you can't export it, you can't buy or sell it, you can't use it even in non-typical use, so you have to treat it properly. If you were to come across that fruit, you should ask and find out more details. I just said it all in 10 seconds. And the other part is that for fruit, the rules of Shemitah the Shemitah fruit is not when it's harvested. It depends on when it reaches a certain stage of growth, which is to say that Shemitah fruit will not be coming to the market until well into the year. Maybe at the end of the winter or the spring will we first start seeing fruit that's from Shemitah, which is a fruit that's harvested right after Rosh Hashanah will not be Shemitah fruit. It will not be considered Shemitah fruit. We won't see the Shemitah fruit till later in the year, and then into the year from now, in 18 months from now, it'll be going on for. The most famous example of it, all of us will come across is that the esrogim that we will use, not this sukkahs, but in a year from now sukkahs, those esrogim, if they came from Eretz Yisrael, will be Shemitah produce, and they will have special rules with them. I'm sure we'll hear about that as we come closer to that year. Now, in order to navigate all of this, to figure out, all these fruits and vegetables, when they come to market, where they are they from Shemitah, are they from, and what they are, there are different groups in Eretz Yisrael that provide information for people so they can find these things. We rely on the charts made by Rabbi Frati and his group of people who take care of these things. The original charts come in Hebrew. We're in the process of actually translating to English to make it easier for our people to work with. And that helps us understand when someone picks up a fruit or vegetable, they want to know, is this from Shemitah, is it not from Shemitah, what's the status, and this and that. We can check on those things. I'm talking now about raw fruits and vegetables. Frozen fruits and vegetables will last even longer. They have a much longer shelf life. They last even longer. So it's not just during Shemitah and right after. They last for longer. And the ones with even longer shelf life are things that are preserved, like canned goods or wines that last for many years afterwards and can show up from many years after Shemitah, even though they were Shemitah produce. So just to summarize, Shemitah is starting now. It's starting in less than 24 hours. People have been prepping for it for months. Individuals and manufacturers and farmers have all been prepping for many months. For us, as far as people here, vegetables will be Shemitah produce coming in a few days from now already. As soon as anything harvested already from Rosh Hashanah, it'll last for the whole year. And fruits will be starting in a couple of months from now, and they will last for give or take a year after that, well into the next Jewish year.